Well, Bob, the reason I called you in is we're going through a downsizing and we'll have to lay you off, unfortunately. I know you're going through a tough time, but it's just what we've got to do best for the company.
How you doing? How are things at the office?
Well, actually, I got laid off today.
Oh man, want to sit down?
Yeah, sit down. Just here, kind of just kind of clearing my head, just kind of put it all together in my head,
I know what you mean. That happened to me while I was there.
I remember that. I do remember that. So, but I'll tell you what, I got all these bills. I'm like really stressed out right now. I got so many bills coming in. I don't have a job, and I'm just, quite frankly, I'm just kind of lost right now.
I kind of get that feeling. I was in a tough spot after I lost my job too, and I found a place at the Crossing, and we're having a chili festival tonight. Maybe you'd be interested in coming and meeting my family and getting to know some people that really helped me out.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Why don't I get your number and okay. I'll shoot you a text with the address so that we can meet up later.
We can do that. Sounds good.
All right, morning. My name is Kenny White, and if you're visiting with us for what would be the fourth consecutive week in a row, what I'm going to say is about to shock you. I'm actually the lead pastor here. I know. That's a surprise. It is good to be back. If you're from around here, you know that this has been a monumental summer for the Whites at the White House. One of my daughters graduated from college in May. Another one got married in July. The second one got married 33 days later in August. And then we flew out to the Northwest to officiate a wedding for my nephew in Spokane, Washington. So we have been gone a lot this summer. And I say that to say it's good to be back, but I also say that to where it is so good to be a part of a church where you guys have been nothing but supportive. You've been encouraging. I've gotten no hate mail whatsoever about being gone, unless you count the text messages that were coming in last Sunday and the Sunday before and the Sunday before saying, you can stay longer if you want. Preachers are pretty good around here. So if maybe that was hate mail and I just didn't get it. But anyway, it's just great to be back with you guys. We certainly have missed being with you all. But it's been incredible just to see what this church is doing. And man, we talk about this being not one church about one pastor, one personality, one clique or club or anything. This is one body. And it's been really cool to see what this body has been doing, even from being away in the Northwest. I do want to say that I need to get going because I haven't preached in 3 weeks. There's a lot of pent-up preaching in me, and so I want to get going. Real quick, though, on the way out the door, you're going to see this little booklet. Pick one up. It says, "We are 4 on this side." And it says, "We are 4 on this side." That's the name of the campaign we're doing. We're starting in this booklet. We'll give you all the information, all the details, answer all the frequently asked questions about this campaign that we're starting this coming month, starting now. And so be sure and stop by and pick one of those up. Now, we started this church 5.5 years ago. So about 6 years ago, we were in the planning phase of this church, just all the planning that went into that and the prayer and just all that. That was obviously a very important time for this church. But I can say that in the 5.5 years we've been in existence, this month is probably the most critical up to our history right now. It is huge, and I say it's huge because I really believe that God is moving. He's always moving, but sometimes we don't get a chance in our lifetime to be really where he's at. And I just want to tell you, if you know anything about our story here in the last few months, God has certainly been moving. We were given an incredible opportunity to purchase 54 acres up on top of the hill, 3 very nice buildings. If you were up there for the chili cook-off last Saturday, or if you were up there for the last 4 days last week for a week of prayer, then you've seen it. You know that we've been incredibly blessed. And God gave it to us for a steal. Now, I hate to use the word steal because we didn't steal it from Life Change, partly because Life Change is such a generous group of people. They wanted to keep it in the kingdom rather than to sell it to just someone or anyone. They wanted it to stay in the ministry, and so they gave it to us for an incredible price of $2 million, which in this market, in this economy, is a steal. But I don't want to call it a steal because I believe God was in it. And so if you've ever said, I really want to be a part of where God is moving, then you're here. It's happening. And I just, it's kind of a heady experience, but when you think about all the ways that God has moved in all of from the beginning of time up until now, he chose to bless this church and to do something, in my feeling, very miraculous while you're here. He's moving in a very miraculous way, and he chose to do it in all of history and all the time right now while you're here. And so the question, the challenge, the thing that I'm looking in the mirror when I look in the mirror is, what am I going to do about that? What am I going to join him in this where he's moving, or am I going to ride this one out? And so that's the challenge. And so for the next month, we're going to be praying, we're going to be talking about this. But here's the deal. This series that we're not going to talk about money. We're not going to talk about fundraising. We're not going to do a capital campaign as far as financial giving series or anything like that. What we decide to do is let's get back and let's just remind people why we do what we do and who we are. We're not going to talk about the what we need. We're going to talk about the why we're here. We're not going to talk about the provision and, I hope the Lord provides and I hope we come through. We're going to talk about the mission and the vision. In the business world, they say, talk about the why, not the what. And so what we're going to talk about over the next few weeks is we decided to use the theme for ... which is an ellipsis. I did my research. That's what that word means, but ... which basically means continuing, a continuation. And we've said from the very beginning, we want to be a church that is known more for what we're for than what we're against. There's a lot of people out there that know certainly what people are against. We want people to know what we're for. What we are for is we are for Jesus. We are for loving people like Jesus loved people, the unlovely, the untouchables. We are for serving. We want to be for the things that Jesus is for. We also want to be known as someone that is for this community. We want to be a benefit to this community. We want to be an asset to this community. We want to be the kind of place that if this church disappeared tomorrow, the community around us would miss us. We want people to see us as, here comes the crossing. They're here to help. They're not here to judge, condemn, cast stones. They're here to help. That's who we are. And so we're for. But what I want to talk about over the next few weeks, and I'm going to start with this today, is that God, next week we're going to talk about God is for others. He's for others. He's for serving. He's for taking the position of the lowliest position, the worst seat at the table. He's for others. Then we're going to talk about action. God is for action. You know, it's one thing to say we believe. It's another thing to actually live like we believe, to be action. The final week we're going to talk about God is for us, because I really believe that while he's for many churches, his plan was to carry out his mission through the local church. We are the local church known as The Crossing. We are one body with many parts, and I believe that God has a plan for this church. He is for us, and he has a plan for us, and so we're going to talk about that. But today, I'm going to talk about something that I know many of you have a very difficult time believing. You have a difficult time wrapping your mind around this because of where you were last night, what you did last night or last week or last month, or what you're going to do in the next couple days because of where you're at. It is really hard for you to believe that God is for you. He is for you. He loves you. You. Yes, you. He's for you. And so that's what we're going to talk about, is we want to talk about how God's for you. Now, one of the statements around here that we throw around a lot, I say it all the time, to where most of you, if you've been around here for like 3 or 4 weeks, you will know this statement. But we say it all the time. The Crossing is a church full of messed up people, led by messed up people, just trying to introduce you to the one who cleans up the mess. We are a church that is full of messed up people, led by messed up people, just trying to introduce you to the one who cleans up the mess. Now, David Vaughn came here and preached like 5 or 6 weeks ago, and he actually, on his own, came up and said, they're trying to introduce you to the one who cleans up the mess. You know, the Messiah. Now, when he said that, I hated him for it. I did, because I'm like, I've been saying that for 5 years, and for whatever reason, I never thought to use it that way, but that's true. The Messiah cleans up the mess. So I was really mad at him. Like, where did you just, like that? You just came up with it. But anyway, we are a church filled with messed up people. There's another way of saying that, and that is if you look around, when you see people here at The Crossing, whether you're visiting or you've been here a long time, you'll see people that could literally say, me too. Me too. Me too. You know, we want people to know that they're welcome here. We want people to know that wherever you're at, whatever you're dealing with, whatever you're struggling with, Welcome to the party, because we are messed up. Me too. Have you ever noticed, though, that there's something about it when you meet someone, maybe for the first time, and you share a common interest, or you have some sort of history together, or maybe you're from the same small town in Kentucky, you're like, what, are you kidding me? And you start telling, whenever you have you share some sort of tidbit, or what, there's like this instant connection, this instant, like, wow, I mean, that's awesome. Have you ever done that? Well, here's the thing. We were out in the Northwest the last couple weeks, again, doing this wedding, and as we were driving around, we were there for 2 Sundays, and on both Sundays, I decided to wear my bright orange Bengal polo. I mean, it is bright orange. You cannot miss it. I mean, it's like I look like a jack-o'-lantern, kind of, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to walk around the Northwest, I'm going to wear this shirt because somebody's going to see me and go, hooday, 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 hey, or hey, Cincinnati, Grater's Ice Cream, the Roses, big boy. I was expecting all that. And so I'm wearing this everywhere we went, in Seattle and Astoria and Oregon and all that. And here's what I got. Nothing. Crickets. I mean, you can see, I'm on the beach, and there's nobody around me that's coming up saying, hey, Bengals and all that stuff. And so I was like, certainly somebody around here will see this jersey and come up and say, hey, Cincinnati or whatever. Got nothing. I even went online. If you go to the CincinnatiBengals.com, they have all those tabs across the top. They have one called the Fan Zone. If you hit the Fan Zone, it drops down. There's a little tab there called Connection Place. Now, you know what that's for? If you're traveling, you pick the state you're traveling to, and all these little bars, taverns, or restaurants like Buffalo Wild Wings, whatever, that actually have a table or a room or section for other like-minded Bengals fans will advertise on there, hey, come on down to this and such, because we meet, whatever. And so I dropped it down, the state of Washington. The state of Washington's huge, by the way. I drove all over it. It's huge. And when I dropped it down in the entire state, there were 7 places that actually said there were Bengal fans there. 7. So the first one I looked at, this is somebody that wrote a testimonial saying, hey, come to Teddy's Tavern. And this is what they said. My wife and I are both Cincinnatians. Found a great spot that makes sure we have Bengals TV and great service for every game. We're proud to be Bengals fans, but we're often alone, and we're often the butt of the usual jokes. I'm like, not going to that one. I get that enough. Here's another one. Different establishment. I'm the lone Bengals fan in a big pond. But on Sundays at Teddy's, I have a plethora of TVs to choose from to watch the game in every hospitable environment. A plethora of TVs. Now, here's the thing. I figured out why he's alone. Because football fans don't use the word plethora. So, now on trivia night, he probably has a veritable cornucopia of friends that are hanging out with him because he's the guy on trivia night that you want to hang with. But plethora of fans, no, he had nobody. Here's another one. This guy, he took his evangelism of Bengal Nation very seriously. He says, there are 28 HD screens and 1 reserved table for Bengals fans. Right now, there are 2 diehards and 2 fans that are in the process of converting from the local Seahawks. Join me in my quest to convert these lost souls and turn this establishment into the jungle of the Pacific Northwest. This guy is out there on a mission to convert the lost Seahawks, but here's the thing. I noticed when he wrote that. He wrote that in September of 2010. You know what's happened since September of 2010? The Bengals haven't won a playoff game. The Seahawks won a Super Bowl and lost another one on a stupid call at the 1-yard line. So my guess is he's lost those 2 converts, and he's probably now a Seahawks fan as well. I just figured by wearing this Bengals shirt that people come and say, hey, we know you, and we could talk and share a little bit of connection, but it didn't happen. Now, if you go to Myrtle Beach, anybody ever been to Myrtle Beach? If you wear like Buckeyes stuff at Myrtle Beach and say, OH, you're going to hear an I-O in back. It'll probably be Chris Wheeler, but somebody will shout back at you, OH. And then you're going to think you're related. We probably know each other. I was looking for a connection out there, and I just couldn't find one. But then I found one where I wasn't looking, and that is when we did this wedding. We did this really cool venue called The Ridge at Rivermere, and the lady that was directing and coordinating the wedding, her name was Nikki, really young lady, and we sat down, and I mean, immediately, as soon as we met, there was just, Cindy and I said it, man, there was a connection. It was like, wow, what is this? And it, like, within 10 minutes of the conversation, she just threw in about something, says, yeah, and I'm a believer. I'm a big believer in prayer, and I'm a big believer in, and I'm like, oh, really? Wow, that's cool. Where do you go to church? And so she shared where she went to church, and I knew the pastor at that church, and we started talking some more, and so we started talking. She started sharing her story, and her husband Chris, who was a catcher for the Texas Rangers for about 5 years, he was there, and he shared his story, and we shared our story, and before long, we were just talking and talking like we've known each other our entire lives, and then come to find out, she has a sister that she's very close to that lives up in the northeast of Ohio, and she says, you know what? We've always wanted to move to the Midwest, so if the time comes, we might just move down to Cincinnati and go to your church, because it just really seems like the Crossing would be a cool place to be a part of. So we did, because it's certainly closer than Spokane, even if we live in Cincinnati and my sister. And so it was just amazing. And I mean, I know she meant it because we became Facebook friends. And we all know that Facebook is reserved for only the tightest of friends right now. And so she and her husband, we're Facebook friends now, and so we follow each other. And I don't know if I'll ever see her again, at least on this side of eternity, but there was a connection. It's amazing now, even you can meet total strangers, and if you find something that you're like, feel a connection to, it's like all of a sudden the walls come down. Well, when you come here to the Crossing, it could be that you have this unexplainable connection. You're like, man, I don't know, I just feel very comfortable here. Well, it's because you're messed up. And so are we. And there's a connection there. There's a me too attitude. Now, you might think that that's not true, but let me just prove it. And I'm going to have you do something. I'm going to have you actually find a partner, all right? Find somebody around you, pair up with someone, and I know that this isn't something that all of you like to do, but just find a partner, all right? Just find one right now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask some questions or make a statement, and if that statement is true of you, you say to the person that you partnered up with, me too. All right, if it's a true statement, you say me too. So let's start with an easy one. I woke up this morning. Me too. Now, if the person that you're paired up with is asleep, wake them up and try it again. Here's another easy one. I came to church this morning. Some of you aren't participating. I'm going to bring you up here, and you're going to have to do it with me. All right? This is the last time I'm saying it. All right, okay. Here's the second one, or the third one. I packed a snack because I knew Kenny was preaching. Uh-huh. Some of you rookies don't know any better. Here's another one. I'm worried about both candidates of the two major parties running for president. Isn't that amazing? You know, the first couple, me too, me too. Me too! Oh, me too! Oh! It's like we hit a nerve. Everybody's like, me too. First service, it happened the same way. Nobody threw chairs or anything, though, so it's good. Here's one. I've said a bad word, cursed, used a profanity in my lifetime, in the last month, in the last week. Some of you may have muttered it when I said pair up with somebody right now under your breath. If any of you have ever cursed in your lifetime, said a bad word, let's hear it. Now you're wishing you didn't pair up with your mom, aren't you? Or your grandma. I have fought with my mom, my dad, my siblings, my spouse, or my children. I have said things that I have regretted. I have gossiped. I have done some things that still haunt me today. Now, I'm going to read off a list, so don't jump right in on this one until I get through with the list, and you'll know why when I get into it, all right? So don't jump in until I ask for you to, okay? I have cheated on my spouse, my significant other. I've cheated on or stolen from my employer. I've cheated in school, on my homework, in the classroom. I've cheated the government, and I've cheated on the golf course, or any of the above. Say me too. I have told a lie. And if somebody didn't say me too, let's go to the next question. I have told a lie in the last 5 seconds. I have done something illegal. Come on, if you go 56 on 32, then you can say, me too. How about this one? I sure hope he doesn't get more specific. I have struggled with fear, anxiety, depression, or worry. Me too. I've had doubts about God or Jesus or my faith. I've been angry at God. I'm losing the battle with addiction, whether it be sex, substances, my iPhone, Candy Crush, Call of Duty, chocolate, food in general, or binge watching Netflix. I have sinned in the last year, the last month, the last week, the last few days, the last hours, and maybe even since I've been here. Me too. Final question. I can't wait to make the largest contribution I've ever given to the crossing at the end of this month. And everyone loudly said, yeah, make sure if they said me too, that you make sure. Author Rita Gadaray said this: some of the most comforting words that can be heard are me too. That moment when you find out that your struggle is also someone else's struggle, and that you're not alone fighting the same battle. The truth is, when you're struggling, when you're hurting, when you're questioning, when you're doubting, and when you're barely hanging on, and you find someone who can identify with you, who gets it, and I mean they get it, and they look you in the eye, and they say, I know what you're going through. Me too. When you find that relationship, it is like so refreshing. And it helps. So when I say that we are a Me Too church, it means that when you come to this church, I don't care what you're in, what you're getting in, or what you've gotten out of, you are among friends who can say, me too. I'm sure there are things that you're struggling with right now. I'm sure that you're maybe at the end of your rope. And there are people here that could probably say, me too. I know exactly how you feel. You know, if you were to look in the scriptures, in the Old Testament, New Testament, you will find lots of stories of men and women in both the Old and the New Testament that could say, what, struggles? Yeah, me too. I've had lots and lots of struggles. Paul, who wrote over half of the New Testament, wrote this very famous passage, and I'm going to read it from the Message, which is a paraphrase using modern day language, but it's Romans chapter 7, verses 15 through 25. Listen to what Paul says. What I don't understand about myself is that I decide one way, but then I act another, doing things that I absolutely despise. So if I can't be trusted to figure out what is best for myself and then do it, it becomes obvious that God's command is necessary. But I need something more. For if I know the law but still can't keep it, and if the power of sin within me keeps sabotaging my best intentions, I obviously need help. Any Me Too's out there so far? I realize that I don't have what it takes. I can will it, but I can't do it. I decide to do good, but I don't really do it. I decide not to do bad, but then I go and do it anyway. My decisions, such as they are, don't result in actions. Something has gone wrong deep within me and gets the better of me every stinking time. It happens so regularly that it's predictable. The moment I decide to do good, sin is right there to trip me up. I truly delight in God's commands. I mean, I do. I want to do what he tells me to do. But it's pretty obvious that not all of me joins in on that delight. Matter of fact, parts of me covertly seem to rebel. And just when I least expect it, that part of me takes charge. I've tried everything I mean everything, and nothing helps. I am at the end of my rope. Is there no one who can help me, who can do anything for me? And he says, isn't that the real question? I mean, can't we relate to the frustration, the struggle Paul is writing about here? This is Paul. The Apostle Paul wrote over 2/3 of the New Testament. But I also believe this is why Paul, who said, I am the chief of all sinners, I am, as in present tense, even after he come to know Christ. I struggle. And even when we try to quit messing up, we struggle. We want to do right. We want to live right by God's standard. We want to pursue righteousness, which is a churchy word for we want to live right. We want to live by His glorious standard. What is the glorious standard? It is what He has in mind. It is His way, the better way, not my way. We're messed up people, and no one here can say otherwise. We all struggle. Isaiah 53:6 says, all of us like sheep have strayed away. We have left God's path to follow our own. All of us have strayed. All of us have strayed. We are all bad. I know, it was bad. That was bad. I know, it's bad. But the point is this. All of us, Greek, Hebrew, Aramaic, all means all of us. When I was bailiffing for Judge Shriver, he was a part of a court. It was a special day. And I didn't get to work it all the time because a lot of times it was on my off day. But one of the things that he did is it was called DUI court. And it's for people who had a DUI or multiple DUIs hanging over their head that wanted help. But this wasn't just like your typical AA. This was one that really had teeth behind it. Because if you didn't do the steps, if you didn't work the steps, you had your sentence hanging over your head. And so when I was there, I got a chance to pick up this copy. Some of you know what this copy is. It's called The Big Book. And it's a book that's handed out to those who are a part of Alcoholics Anonymous. And what's interesting is this read, it's all about Bill W. and his whole life story and how he just didn't think he could turn it around. And he finally got to rock bottom, like the 10th time rock bottom. And he met this physician, and it tells his whole story, and then they basically start this accountability kind of thing, and then this group, and it just mushrooms from there. But what I find is really interesting is I want you to hear what he says. This is in the very second chapter of this big book. This is what it says. We are people who normally would not mix, but there exists among us a fellowship, friendliness, and an understanding which is indescribably wonderful. We are like passengers of a great liner the moment after rescue from shipwreck, when camaraderie, joyousness, and democracy pervade the vessel from steerage to the captain's table. In other words, before this ship sunk, there might have been people at the captain's table, and there might have been people below deck in the steerage, but now we are all on this rescue boat together. Whether you were on the captain's table or we're in the steerage. And here's what he says, it's very interesting. We are people who normally would not mix. We normally would not mix. And if you've ever been a part of an AA or 12-step meeting, you know that there is an assortment of people there from all walks of life, all ages, all races, all socioeconomic backgrounds, all religions, all ethnicity, whatever ethnicities, all of that. And they're a group of people that would not normally mix. But they're there, and they're in an environment where everybody in that room, from the captain's table to the steerage, can say, me too. Me too. And you know it seems to be working because in 1935, there was Bill W. and the doctor friend. So there were two in 1935. By 1940, 1,400 people joined AA. And 80 years later, there are now over 2 million people. And since it is anonymous, maybe there's even more than that. There are over 100,000 groups in 150 different countries. So why do I bring that up? Because if you were to look around here this morning, what you would see at the crossing is a group of people who may not normally mix. We may not normally hang out together. There are people here that are rich and poor, black and white, single, married, divorced, widowed, Bengals fans, Steelers fans, and Browns fans. There are Democrats and Republicans and people who are preparing to move to Canada, all right here in this room. We all make up a group of messed up people that normally wouldn't mix. But what brings us together is the shipwreck lives that we have come into. We have ran ourselves aground. Our lives have been ravaged by sin, created by the mess of our rebellion and defiance in our lives, and we need help and we need rescue. And we come here to find safety and rescue. And it may be in the people here, but let me just remind you why we exist as a church. Because we want you to know the one who cleans up the mess. That's why. And so we have a group here that would not normally mix, but yet here we are. And the same thing could have been said about the very first church in the book of Acts, because the very first church in the book of Acts had Jews and Gentiles, had masters or slave owners with their slaves, with their servants, had men and women and children. And they were all gathered together, all on an equal plane. Trust me, these are people who would not normally mix. But the reason they were there is because they realized there was only one way, one truth, and one life. And that is Jesus. And so they gathered together, this unlikely bunch. And when they looked around, they were able to say to one another, "Me too. Me too." So this morning, I want to just wrap up with 3 pretty simple points. And I'm going to roll through them pretty quick. We all say "me too" here. We can all say "me too." But here's the thing. There's really a way that you can say "me too" that's inappropriate or harmful. You can actually say "me too" in a way that is inappropriate and harmful. The first one, it's "me too. So what? Who cares? Me too. You struggle, so do I struggle. Let's start a support group where I will support your struggle and you support me in my struggle. You're having a difficult time with alcohol? Me too. So let's go down to happy hour where you get a bucket of long necks for $10 and let's talk about it. You're struggling with pornography? Me too. But you know what? It's every man's battle, and now the women are getting into it because there's mommy porn. And I mean, after all, since everybody's doing it, then why bother? Who cares? You're struggling, so am I struggling. Let's just struggle together, and who cares? There are ways that we can say "me too" as if to wink, and you know, it's not that bad. It's not too bad. And that is a very indifferent response. That is a response that does not show compassion or concern. That is the kind of response that says, "You're on your own. Good luck. Hope you can tread for a long time." You see, the problem with that kind of "me too" is it kind of conveys that it's okay to just be who you are. And when you come to know Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, you're no longer who you are. You're striving to be who He is, who He's called us to be. So "me too, so what?" That is not the answer. Here's another way we follow it. And this one's pretty prevalent in a lot of churches and probably in this one as well, because we're a messed up church. But what? You're struggling? Well, me too. But just not as bad as you. I mean, your struggle, whoa, a lot worse than mine. Me too, but not as bad as you. It's kind of like the "bless your little heart," you know? Yeah, bless your heart. I mean, you know, we all sin. Just glad I don't sin like you, because you're really messed up. You're hosed. You're in trouble. I might sin, but at least I don't do that. Another way of saying it that way is really, and we would never say it like this because this would come across as too self-righteous, or this might actually start to get us confused. People might confuse us with the Pharisees of Jesus' time, and that is, me too. Not really. Not me. Not me. I don't struggle. Not me, I mean, I have struggles, but they're not like your struggles. You've got struggles. Not me. Not me. And the way that kind of festers in us is something like, well, I remember when I used to sin, but ever since I've gotten saved, what? Go ahead and finish that one out. Ever since you've gotten saved, you don't sin anymore? You've never sinned again? But you know, they're sinning different. Now, you know, but since I've been saved, I don't sin near as much or near as bad. Well, I just don't sin as much as I used to. And when I do, I mean, they're small sins compared to the whoppers that these people do. 1 John 1:8 says this, that if we claim to be without sin, we deceive ourselves and the truth is not in us. I read an article by Michael Cheshire, and the article is called Going to Hell with Ted Haggard. Now, some of you will remember Ted Haggard. Some of you probably won't. But Ted Haggard was a very prominent evangelist in Colorado that was very much a part of like the Family Research Council or some sort of family ministry. And it come to find out that Ted Haggard was caught hiring male prostitutes and joining him in hotels for massages and doing crystal meth. And after the scandal broke, Haggard obviously fell very far, as they say, from grace. But he had gotten counseling, and then over time, over some restoration, he started back into the ministry. But most of us watching from the outside scoffed at the idea that he could ever be a legitimate minister ever again. And his story, what he said was, he was doing lunch one time at his local sports bar, this is Michael speaking, with a close atheist friend. Now, my atheist friend is a great guy and a very deep thinker, and all of a sudden, Ted pops up on TV. This is after all this has happened. He says, Ted pops up on TV, and it was well after Ted's story had died down when my friend shared, see that guy? That guy said sorry for a long time. He said it a long time ago, and even his wife and kids stayed and forgave him, but all you Christians still seem to hate him. You guys can't forgive him and let him back into your good graces. Every time you talk to me about God, this is the atheist speaking, every time you talk to me about God, you explain that he will take me as I am. You say he forgives all my failures and will restore my hope, but apparently only as long as I stay outside the church. You say God wants to forgive me, but that guy, he was one of you. And when he failed, well, most of you are still very vicious to him. And then he finished by saying these words that Michael said left him reeling. He says, you Christians eat your own. Always have, always will. You see, there's times when we say, me too, but not really. Not really. And we could be just as harsh. We point out the things that we think are bad in other people while quietly sweeping under the rug and overlooking the things that are bad in us. Heard one pastor say it this way, that for the most part, our list of sins generally involves the ones we personally don't struggle with. So the sins that we like to list are the ones that you're not personally struggling with right now. And he gave examples. In other words, it's okay to be prideful as long as you're not gay. It's okay to be greedy as long as you don't commit adultery. It's okay to lie as long as you don't steal. It's okay to gossip, just don't murder. You see how we do that? And yet, any thought or action that is not God's will or for God's glory falls short. Everyone. God is perfect, and anything we do that falls short of that perfection is called sin. There's another analogy that they use, it's called missing the mark. Sin means missing the mark. So if you've ever been in archery class in gym, or maybe you do it for fun as a hobby. But the whole idea is when you pull that bow back and let it go, if you miss by just a little bit, I missed the target by just a little bit, or you missed it by a mile, guess what? You missed the target. And everyone who missed the target has fallen short of the glory of God. Whether it's a little or a lot. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. We've all missed the mark. There's things that we've done maybe that we're not even aware of. Maybe there's things that you're not doing that you should be doing. And there are certainly things that you're doing that you shouldn't be doing. So we've all sinned. We've all missed the mark. And Paul says in Galatians, the church of Galatia, this is what he says. This is why we need Christ, because he's the only one who can forgive us of those misses. He's the only one who can help us live the way we should. And so Paul says, dear brothers and sisters, if another believer is overcome by some sin, you who are godly should gently and humbly help that person back onto the right path. Gently and humbly. Condescending, condemning, yelling, that's not gently. And humbly, well, it's not humbly when we say, haha, me too, but not really. Not as bad as you. Because he goes on and says, be careful that you don't fall into the same temptation. Be careful that you don't fall into yourself. Share in each other's burdens, and in this way obey the law of Christ. If you think you're too important to help someone, you're only fooling yourself because you're not that important. Here's another way of saying it. If you think you're all high and mighty, well, you're not. You're not. So since you're not Jesus, why don't you leave it up to him? Why don't you leave it up to the Holy Spirit to do the work? Because you're not him. We want to play him. We really do. But we're not him. And so we have to be very, very careful to not, what? Well, me too. Let's party. That's awesome. Great. What's the big deal? Or, me too, but not really. At least not as bad as you got it. Those are both the kind of Me Too responses that are harmful. The best response that we as a church body need to have is this one. Me too. But now what? What are we going to do about it? What are we going to do? You see, that shows empathy, but that also shows concern. Because we got work to do, you and I. We got things we got to work on. It sends a message that welcome to the judge-free zone. But we can't stay here. We can't keep wallowing in this sin. We got to get moving out of this place. You see, we need to stop being the kind of place that, where there's acceptance but never any accountability. There has to be accountability. Paul even says it. If a believer is overcome by sin, you are to go and to gently and humbly try to get them back on the right path. So there has to be some accountability. There has to be okay, you screwed up. I've screwed up. But now what? What are we going to do about that? You see, the church has to be different. Because if there's never any accountability, if there's never any transformation, if there's never any change, then guess what? We don't look any different from those who would never set foot in a place like this. We look no different. And there has to be a way of telling the body of Christ apart from the rest of the world. Let me use another analogy or illustrate it this way. If you've ever been traveling and you've been going through maybe an area of the country that you're not familiar with, but there's like all these paper mills around there, and as you're rolling by there, all of a sudden you smell this really rotten eggish kind of smell that kind of seeps into the car. And at first, if you're traveling with someone, you're thinking, did you just do that? And then you're like, no, roll down the window, and you're like, oh no, it's just the area. And so you're like, oh, well, that's because it's a paper plant, or it's because of the manufacturing plant. That's why it smells so much. So you notice it as soon as you roll through there. But if you ever talk to someone who lives there, they don't notice it anymore. They're immune to it. We have to be the kind of place that is welcoming. that has the me too. But we can never get to the point where we are so comfortable that we can't smell the stench of sin anymore. That we become immune to it. Paul writes about that in 12:2 of Romans. Do not conform any longer to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So yes, we're a Me Too church, but we need to be really careful that the follow-up to that Me Too does not show a sense of indifference or a sense of self-righteous arrogance, but instead shows a sense of compassion and a spurring on towards life transformation. You know, in AA, they say that the only step you can work to perfection is step one. Step one is admitting that you are powerless over alcohol and that your life has become unmanageable. Well, that's exactly what Paul did. The passage we read earlier, he realized, I'm so up the creek. Remember, he says, I've tried everything, nothing helps. I'm at the end of my rope. Is there no one who could do anything for me? You see, that's step one right there. He just realized, my life is out of control. I can't manage it anymore. I am so in trouble. But then he answers it in verse 25 by saying, the answer, thank God. Thank God there's an answer to my problems. The answer is Jesus Christ. The answer is in him. He acted in a way to set things right in this life of contradictions, where I want to serve God with all my heart and mind, but I'm pulled by the influence of sin to do something totally different. The answer is in Jesus. If you've been a part of AA, step one is admitting I can't. Step two is acknowledging, but he can. He can. And that's what Paul's doing here. I can't do it, but he can. Thank God. He did it. And so through him, I can be rescued. I have been on a sinking ship. I'm without hope. But because of him, I have a chance for rescue. Interesting, in the same book, there's an excerpt that he writes, Bill does. The tremendous fact for every one of us, all of us together in this group at AA, is that we've discovered a common solution. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree, and upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. This way out, this is the great news this book carries to all those who suffer from alcoholism. And what I found is really interesting, that if you just substitute an idea and one word, here's what this would read. I'm going to just change one word. The tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. We have a way out in which we can absolutely agree and upon which we can join in the brotherly and harmonious action. This is the great news that this book carries to those who suffer from sin. And you have a way out because God loves you. God is for you. You. For God so loved you that he was willing to give up his only son to die a death for you. 1 John 3:16. We know what real love is. Real love is what Jesus did because Jesus gave up his life for you. Romans, Jay touched on it. Christ arrived right on time to make this happen. He didn't and doesn't wait for us to get ready. He presented himself for this sacrificial death when we were far too weak and rebellious to do anything to get ourselves ready. And even if he hadn't been so weak, we wouldn't have known what to do anyway. We can understand someone dying for a person worth dying for, and we can understand how someone good and noble can inspire us to selfless sacrifice. But God put his love on the line for you and me by offering his son in sacrificial death while you and I were of no use whatsoever to him. You see, God inserted his son Jesus into your mess. You are on a ship that is sinking, that is going to the bottom, and the only way for rescue, the only way you and I can be rescued, is by and through a vessel by the name of Jesus Christ, by what Jesus did on Calvary. You see, I don't think we realize that when Jesus took on all the sins, all of yours and all mine and all the sins of humanity onto the cross, that was his Me Too moment. I mean, think of it this way. In a sense, that moment, I get sin because I'm paying for it. Me too. Me too. But on the day of his resurrection, that was kind of the now what? Me too, but now what? Now what? When somebody is in AA, they come to the 12-step meeting. The first time they stand up to share and tell their story, they'll often begin by saying, "My name is Joe. I'm an alcoholic." And everybody else there will say, "Hi, Joe." In other words, what they're saying is, "Me too." Well, at the crossing every Sunday, I can stand up here and say, "Hi, my name is Kenny, and I'm a sinner." And all of you should reply, "Hi, Kenny. Me too." But there is one and only one who is the solution to all of our problems. And he gave up his life and laid it down for you because God is for you. So I'm going to ask you one last question or make one last statement, and this is one that I hope that all of you can say, "Me too," too. But if you can't, we're going to give you the opportunity to talk about it. What I would like everybody to be able to say "me too" is to this statement: I was lost. I was without hope. I was heading down the road towards destruction. But because of what Jesus Christ did, I am now saved. I hope and pray every single one of you can say to that, "Me too." But if you can't, we're going to give you the opportunity to accept Jesus Christ as that Lord, as a Savior, as that lifeboat to rescue you from the mess that you're in. And so we're going to have everyone stand. We're going to sing. I'll be down front. There'll be people over here that'll be happy to pray with you. And if you want to talk about Jesus, what we need to do, what you need to do to just accept him, we'll be happy to talk to you about that and pray with you about that.